Mythic champions on the test server. Let's take a look and see how good they actually are. Welcome, I'm the DeadwoodJedi. This is another Raid Shadow Legends video. As I said in the opening, we are on the test server and we have access to a bunch of the new mythical champions, 5 of them in fact. I believe this is all that we have available, at least for now. I'm sure there will be more added to the game as it unfolds, but we've got these 5 right now, and I figured the best thing we can do is kind of just look through their kits. With the faction games going on, I haven't had time to actually test them, and we actually had them on the test server for like a day, maybe 2, so I haven't had a chance to dive in too much into all their kits. But I thought what we could do is go through their skills really quick, see who's what, and kind of get excited for these. I think you're gonna have a lot of fun playing with them. They have some interesting stuff. Now, I do know this is the first time they're being added, so you know, how hard do they hit? You know, do their skills really mesh? I'm sure there's gonna be some stuff worked in there because, you know, the question is if these, it also really depends on how rare and hard it is to get these champions, right? Because obviously they're incredibly hard to get. We need them to be worth the effort, right? Worth the cost, whatever effort we're putting in to get them. Much like getting a legendary with such a low chance to pull them, you want them to be worth it. You want them to be good. These mythic champions absolutely fall in that category. So, you know, as far as the details of how good they are right now, I don't know. And I don't know that it really matters. First off, it's going to be hard to get them right away. So 90% of you guys, it's not going to affect one way or the other because you're not going to get one right off the jump. And secondly, we'll obviously need to see how they play in game, right? Obviously, you know, a lot of times our first reactions, especially in this game, tend to be negative when in actuality, it's not as, you know, they're not as bad. We find uses for them. There's a ton of champions we can go through, tons of past fusion champions where people are like, trash, and then all of a sudden they're like, okay, that's a pretty good champion. Okay, this is actually a really good champion, that type of stuff. So try to hold, I've been trying to coach myself to hold back, be a little bit more reserved in my judgment of these champions. But of course, you guys do what you want. I'm just here with the information for you, so let's break it down, right? So we've got Erebus Stonethorn. Very cool champions, right? She's got these two different versions of her. The first one is kind of, you know, passive. The second one, obviously, she becomes this big oak tree type creature, which is pretty awesome. But let's go through her base form right here. Attacks all enemies. She's Sylvan, by the way. I don't know if that matters. Sylvan, you know, red champion, force affinity. But attacks all enemies. AoE, which is really nice. A lot of these have AoEs. Block active skills, debuff for 1 turn, and damage based on attack. Now you'll notice the skills is kind of interesting. Ignore resistance by 20% is something that gets added later on as you book her, and a damage buff. Only 2 books, right? You know, the number of books to upgrade these champions is split between their skills. So we've got 2 on the A1. I love an AoE skill, and I love block active skills. I think that's very powerful, especially for like dungeon runs or even arena. Can be really good. Obviously not as good for boss battles, right? So when we're talking about things like Hydra at clan boss, not as useful. But it does work really well if you want to put a like you know, curse set with hex. That can actually prove really nice. Any, you know, stun sets, those kind of debuff things provoke. A2 removes all buffs from all enemies, increases duration of all ally buffs by 1 turn. We got a buff extension here and a buff strip of the enemy, and places revive on death on all allies for 2 turns. Another ignore resistance, right? Which I think is really interesting. So I'm wondering if these ignore resistance become global add-ons or if they're individual for the skill. I think that's actually something to kind of note because this does not say it's an attack skill. So if this is an attack skill, great. Cooldown by 1 turn right there. And then the other one, the A3, fills turn meter of all allies by 30%, places a 50% increase attack buff, and a 50% increase actually buff on all allies for 2 turns. This is obviously a very nice, you know, offense-focused skill. Cools it down to a 4-turn cooldown. A2 is a 3-turn cooldown. Pretty typical for us. But that's always nice. Then we have the Metamorph, right? This will change her form and gives her an extra turn. That's across the board what that does. Her passive ability, 30% chance of placing a petrification debuff on an attacker for 1 turn whenever an ally is attacked while under a revive on death buff placed by this champion. So getting that revive on death on everybody is really nice because all of a sudden now you basically have a petrification thing, right? Everybody's Mithrala out here. That's pretty powerful ability. The turn meter boost with increased attack and increased accuracy is a really nice opener as well. So you may be open with that, extend it, drop in, the revive on death, and hopefully you're provoking people while your team is, landing your debuffs and the block active skills. A lot of good skills in there. Very debuff heavy champion, it feels like to me, and kind of a support style champion, which it says support. The other half of her though, when she changes, A1 attacks one enemy, a single target, and that was good. Decreases the target's turn meter by 30%. That's pretty significant. And then places a continuous heal buff on this champion for 1 turn and another one on an ally below HP for 1 turn. This is damage is based on HP. Her original form, make sure I can see this, is based on attack. So that's one thing you're going to need to know. Do I want to do an HP base or an attack base? Considering she's so support focused, I would think you'd want to go HP based anyway. And not worry about the damage. Now we got another ignore resistance here, more damage. We got another resistance and ignore damage here. So 5 books, I think, on either side, 10 books total, pretty typical. A2 AoE with a leech and an HP burn debuff. That's always nice. I love that combination. I think that's going to be really good for us. And then the A3, 2 more continuous heal buffs on all allies for 2 turns. Also a taunt and a stone skin buff. Taunt for 2 turns, stone skin for 1 on her. That's a really nice one. This does also book to 4 turn cooldown. So the cooldowns mirror each other on either side of the bracket. Again, you got the metamorph skill. 4 turn cooldown on that. So a little bit of a cooldown action there. I wonder if that's different here. It's 4 turns on either side. That's pretty typical. So either form, you're going to get a 4 turn cooldown. And the passive ability, when attack places a 30% decreased speed debuff on the attacker for 2 turns. Occurs once per hit. That's pretty good, I'd say. Also decreases the damage taken by all allies from skills by 20%. This champion will see that damage instead. So you got a kind of a passive ally protection ability, very similar to somebody like Ursuga, which is really nice. So there's some cool stuff on this kit. I don't know. It's interesting to see how do the two synergize, right? So they both forms have debuffs. This one has that decreased defense, the leech, and the HP burn, right? And that that decreased speed as well. I think that's what I meant. This had decreased speed, but I meant decreased speed, decreased turn meter, and leech and HP burn, and then a lot of passive stuff, right? She has a taunt and stone skin, so she'll absorb the enemy's attacks and protect your allies, heal them up. Continuous heals on the A1 as well. So that becomes kind of this debuff tank. And then her primary skill has the block active skill ability, the revive on death, increase attack, increase accuracy, and turn meter boost. Plus that petrification thing, a very interesting kind of champion. Kind of champion I would want to build with a lot of accuracy, I think. A lot of accuracy, a lot of HP, because there's so many debuffs coming out of her kit, because she's doing so much protecting her allies. Wouldn't worry about damage. I'd be worried about survivability. I think that's going to be her big thing. This aura, 25% speed in all battles, is really nice. That's definitely something that you can use in a lot of different areas as well. We've got Frolny the Mechanist. Interesting champion. What's he got here? His base abilities here. Again, we've got 5 books needed on his base. What's his metamorphized form? Becomes a mech warrior. That makes sense. Mechanist, right? Another 5 books on this as well. So anyway, he's got an HP aura. 35% is really nice. A1 ignores 5% of defense for each buff on this champion. And the book increases damage. That's a lot of defense ignored for sure. I mean, it can be anyway. That can be pretty significant. A2 attacks one enemy, steals 2 buffs. It can't be resisted, so that means you don't need accuracy for the skill. If this attack is critical, repeat the attack once. That turns that into a double hitter, assuming that hits hard, which it would need to hit hard. That could be very effective. This is damage based on HP. It's also his base skill, so I'm curious as far as which one hits harder, his base or his ascended form. Attacks all enemies. Damage of this skill increases by 30% if this champion's max HP is higher than each target's max HP. So build him with HP. He's going to hit pretty hard. As an AoE skill, that's pretty good. This is pretty significant damage boost, it seems like. So that's pretty nice. Obviously, the alternate form here. And passive ability increased. This champion's crit damage is increased by 1% for every 1,000 HP they have. So if you give them 100,000 HP, this crit damage is going to be increased by 100. That's actually pretty significant. Also increases this champion's max HP by 20%, stacks up to 100%, and speed by 20, stacks up to 100. Whenever this champion kills an enemy, resets each round. I want to pair this champion with the rabbit. I think that would be phenomenal because they're both going to just grow their speed and actually, stay on par with each other. That makes him very interesting for dungeon runs, I would say. Obviously, he's not going to be, it doesn't matter for things like arena. That's not really going to matter. But things like dungeons, this guy could be pretty nasty, it sounds like. Getting an extra 100 speed, getting an extra 100, like basically doubling his max HP for an HP based champion. And then that's increasing your crit damage as well. That could be insane. I mean, you're talking about if you give him 100,000 HP, you're talking about increasing his crit damage by 200% just from his passive ability. That's pretty nuts. Let's see his other form here. See, the thing is, though, his other form is defense based, so that's going to be very interesting. Attacks one enemy 2 times. Each hit increases champion's defense by 5%. So every time he attacks, his defense goes up. A2 attacks one enemy, heals his champion by 50% of their max HP. Balances the HP of all allies. HP levels of all allies would be brought up to the level of the ally with the highest HP. It's pretty typical. 3-turn cooldown with the 2 books here. That can be really effective, especially because he's healing 50%, so he'll probably have the most HP. And if you think about it, because it's HP on his main form, that can actually synergize extremely well by having him have high HP. And then his A3 ally protection buff, right? Unkillable on himself. So ally protection for 2 turns, unkillable for 2 turns. And then a shield buff for 2 turns on all allies with less than 50% HP. And the value of the shield is proportional to this is his defense. Also on a 3-turn cooldown. So all of his skills here are going to be on a 3-turn cooldown rotation, which I think is really interesting. That offers some interesting synergies. 4-turn for the switch. Passive ability when attacked, reflects 80% of the damage this champion receives back to the attacker. Debuffs placed on this champion decrease their producer's accuracy by 10%. Wow, stacks up to 50%. That's really interesting. 80% reflective damage is a lot. So this guy, honestly, this seems like the best one we've looked at. I mean, I like him better than the other one. And I think there's some real interesting synergy here. Maxing him out on HP is going to make him hit extremely hard on his first form. And then when you switch to his second form, he's going to heal all your allies, protect himself, and protect them with the unkillable ally protection. And his passive ability means that he's reflecting, 80% of the damage is a lot. So let's say you take him in arena. Even, honestly, as long as you can switch forms, you don't really have to do anything else. They drop a big nuke champion, a Hef-Rack, right? If it hits him, and now all of a sudden 80% of the damage is reflected back. Well, he's got way more HP than any of those nukers do in arena, which means that all that damage is going to be reflected right back on and kill them. That's pretty massive, I would say. Obviously, getting your, I don't know, this is great for a go second to style team, but there's a lot of interesting synergy there where you can really kind of mess up an enemy AoE nuker with him. And I think that's really interesting. Could make for some powerful synergies, but I can just imagine going in the main form, you're coming in, right? You build with a ton of HP, right? Just build them to the 9s with HP, crit rate, crit damage, all that stuff, right? And then you drop in the AoE, and that's it. I got more HP than you. I'm getting an extra 30% bonus AoE. I'm getting all this extra crit damage anyway. Boom, hit them all, mess them up, and then maybe you come in with the A1 because you get that, when you crit, you get a double hit. So maybe clean up some messes that way. Or maybe you're like, okay, well, we did our thing. Now it's time to play some defense. I'm going to swap over to the other form. I'm going to heal everybody up, right? When he heals up 50% and then balances the HP level, he's got 100,000 HP. At least 50,000. Everybody's full, right? Maybe not him, but everybody else is. And then I'm like, oh, you know what? Let me put ally protection, unkillable, and shields on everybody. That's a great thing. Or maybe I do that first and then do the heal. And then you hit him and he's reflecting the damage back. All I know is that there's some interesting synergies going on here with this guy. That could be really interesting. I don't know, exactly how it works, but definitely the kit build, the skills themselves seem to lend themselves to some nice synergies going on there. That's really interesting. Who else we got? Siegfried the Nephilim. This is the guy that was obviously showcased in the video from Raid. And my guess is that when it comes down to it, he'll be the free champion that we're able to get, right? So let's see. We got him in his base form, and then his ascended form, he gets the wings, right? He's got some interesting stuff here as far as like swapping. So his transformation metamorph is a passive. Everybody else has to die for him to be able to use that. I hate that personally, like my least favorite mechanic, but there it is. So that I don't know how we're going to make that work and unlock, but that it seems to be the way that he gets used. So I don't know if that's really good or not. It's not my favorite ability. I hate when passives get unlocked by stuff like that, because like, I don't want to create a situation where the rest of my team has to die for him to work, but that's okay. We'll see. Maybe they'll change it in the future. Maybe they won't. We'll see how it goes. A1 attacks one enemy 2 times. First hit transfers all debuffs from this champion to the target. That's good. Second hit then increases the duration of all those debuffs on the target. Also good. So we're getting some interesting, debuff stuff. A2 attacks all enemies. Crit hit. Builds his champion's turn meter by 25% for each one. That actually can be really powerful, especially if you take him in something like Spiders, where he'll basically end up giving himself an extra turn because he's just filling his turn meter so fast with so many crits. Resets the cooldown of Rage of Nephilim skill if this attack kills an enemy. Resets the cooldown of all this champion skills if this attack kills 2 or more enemies. So there's definitely some potential to be able to, cycle this one over and over and over again, depending on who you're fighting and how many kills you're able to get with it. So that's definitely interesting. If you have him, let's say, go second in your team, first one sets it up by putting decreased defense and weaken out there, AoE, and then he comes in and nukes the enemy, and then he'll immediately have another turn because of the turn meter, and his skills are reset. So almost like Ava, right? Ava's an interesting champion who nobody uses anymore, but is really only good for campaign farming, and even that, like, I don't think anybody actually uses her for that really anymore. But she resets her skills when she kills people. Well, we're kind of getting the same thing here, so that could be kind of interesting. I think he's obviously going to be an amazing campaign farmer, but also I think he could be really good in things like Minotaur. He could be really great for dungeon runs. There's some interesting potential with that for sure. Just having his skills reset over and over and over again. If he hits hard, that's going to be the big question, right? A3 attacks one enemy, will attack all remaining enemies with any surplus damage if the initial target is killed. That's always a nice thing, right? That's that Baron A1 ability. But this is A3, so that's interesting. Fully heals his champion if the initial hit kills an enemy. So there's definitely some interesting stuff going on there, right? Depending on how hard that skill hits, and it is single target, so you would imagine it hits relatively hard. If you can one-shot people with that ability, it can be, I think, that could end up being pretty significant. Not my favorite. I don't really like these conditional skills that much, so it's not really my favorite, to be honest. He does have an aura, all attack on all battles. His passive, champion's about to get killed by a fatal hit, blocks the incoming damage and places a block damage buff on this champion for 1 turn. Awesome arena ability. Then heals this champion by 50% of their max HP and fills their turn meter by 100%. This is going to be great for a go second to style champion, right? In the arena, especially. You get hit, you don't have to build them with that much any really sustain, because he gets hit, he doesn't die. He gets that block damage buff instantly, and then he's going to heal by 50%, and he's going to get his turn meter filled, so you can interrupt the enemy after that potentially. That is really interesting. Now, as always, the wording versus the actuality is always a little iffy, right? When it says fills their turn meter by 100%, does that mean in addition to what he already has, or fills it to 100%? Always a little questionable. So can he interrupt, or does he just go next, is always a question. But I mean, that's definitely got some potential as far as usage. But as always, it's not just about the skill, synergy and situations, but it's also about the damage that can get done. He doesn't hit hard. It doesn't matter. But then he's also got his Nephilim ability. I will say this. I want to go back really quickly. The one thing about that passive is because Nephilim ability isn't activated till everybody else is dead. This passive could actually become really important where basically you put him with a bunch of nobodies, they all die, but he gets the block damage, comes back, turn meter goes to 100%, he's fully healed, and then he does the big nuke, and guess what the big nuke does? Resets the cooldown of all this champion's skills if it kills somebody. Or kills 2 or more enemies. So that means that passive should be reset as well. There is some interesting synergy there for sure. Kind of Kitus without needing, the additional help in champions. Anyway, his other ability, right, when he swaps over, now he becomes a healer, right? Attacks all enemy, heals all allies 20% of the damage, removes all debuffs from all allies, full cleanse, and then heals them by 30% of their max HP and places a block debuff on them for 2 turns. Kind of a cardio sort of move, and then revives all dead allies with 50% HP and 50% turn meter, then places a block damage buff on all allies except the champion for 1 turn. Those are obviously really nice. It's 4 books on this side, and it looks like 5 books on this side. So 9 books total for him, which I think is interesting. So he's got a full revive, he's got a cleanse, block debuff, right, and heal. Always nice. And then an AoE attack with the big heal off of it. It's interesting. It's definitely interesting. What's his passive here? It decreases damage taken from skills by 20%. Very nice passive for him. So I think with this kind of a champion, it's going to be hard to build him to utilize both sides of his skills, right? I think you're going to really need to focus either as that revive or healer or as the damage dealer. Will say this though, certainly possible to build him as just the revive champion, even with the other skills, because, or I should say as a damage dealer and a reviver, right? Because one of the things that I think is really interesting is, obviously we get this Rage of the Nephilim ability. The big thing about this is the crit hits refilling his turn meter. If he can fill his turn meter fast enough where he can take multiple turns before the enemy goes, and I'm thinking specifically Arena, nuke down the whole team, including him. Well, he doesn't die because he puts the block damage on himself. He gets that big turn meter boost, so he goes next. He nukes the enemy. As long as he kills 2 people, with all the turn meter boosts he's getting, maybe he goes again. Hopefully, he goes again right away. And if that's the case, then after he goes, he's able to swap over. First off, he could do his hit again. He could definitely do the nuke again. He's cool down all the skills, right? But even if he doesn't cool down the skills, even if he doesn't kill anybody, he can then use Metamorph ability, swap over, and then revive his allies with that block damage so that they don't die again. That could be really interesting. There's possibilities there. There's some interesting possibilities where there's like this kind of revive thing going on with all these champions. That's an interesting champion. I think he's got some definite potential. I think we will see him in Arena. The skill reset is a pretty significant thing. The block damage part of it as a passive ability, so he doesn't die, is also really, really important. Let's see, who else we got? We got Mezomel Looper Fang. Kind of interesting champion here. I like the look, I'll be honest. I love this is a Skinwalker? Wait, this is a Skinwalker. Oh, wow. I like it's a mask, but I guess she's a wolf underneath it anyway. Very cool. Let's see her other side of her skills. Yeah, full wolf. Full on wolf at this point. Okay, forget the weapons. We're just going claws out. Balls out, claws out. That's not a saying. I feel kind of bad about that one. Okay, moving on. Anyway, so what is her skills? What's she got going on here? Well, A1 is going to be decreased defense. Pretty basic, honestly, a little disappointing. Damage based on attack, single target, decreased defense, not my favorite. A2, single target, double hitter, does ignore stone skin, strengthen, ally protection, and shield buffs, and then places a block revive debuff if the target is killed. That's obviously really nice, right? When you can single target somebody, block their revive, that can be a game changer in Arena. That can be really good in things like Ice Golem as well. But that is definitely not bad. Definitely seems Arena focused though. These are all attack based. A3, again, we're talking, there's 6 books on this side. A lot of books for base abilities. But we got increased attack, increased crit rate, and increased crit damage on this champion for 3 turns, and then grants an extra turn. So this is a 4-turn cooldown. With the extra turn, it's going to effectively work like it's on a 3-turn cooldown. Those buffs are for 3 turns, but because of the extra turn, they're effectively a 2-turn duration, right? So let's kind of keep those things in mind. But that's interesting. This books down to a 3-turn cooldown. This books down to a 4-turn cooldown, but there's an extra turn. So this is basically like a 3-turn cooldown, and the other one's basically like a 2-turn. Okay, interesting. Not bad. Metamorphosis skill. Passive ability heals a champion by 20% of the damage inflicted. Places a revive on death buff on the champion for 2 turns every time they kill an enemy. So she's got a built-in lifesteal. That's definitely good. 27% crit rate in all battles. I think that's tops in the game. It's a really nice one as well. So interesting. Built-in lifesteal, a lot of single target damage. Definitely does some stuff to help keep her alive. Obviously increased attack, crit rate, and crit damage. Those are really good buffs as far as to deal more damage. The extra turn means that she doesn't miss out on any attacks to give that to herself either. Interesting champion. Interesting. Single target champions, not generally super popular unless they hit insanely hard. So we'll have to see if that's the case. Her other half here, she's still attack based, so that's good. Being attack based on both sides does mean that you can build her, a little bit easier. So that's really nice. AoE does not trigger counterattacks and extra hit on enemies under True Fear debuff, which will make sense. Also, 5 books on this side. So 5 books, 6 books. That's not so bad. So 11 books. AoE, A2 is the AoE and places True Fear debuff for 2 turns. That's pretty nice. I'm pretty sure that's going to take some accuracy. So we're probably going to need something. It doesn't say it, ignore it, doesn't need it. So yeah, they're going to need accuracy on her. This attack does not trigger counterattacks and also ignores unkillable and block damage. There's definitely some interesting, good stuff here. There is a 20% ignore resistance, as well as a cooldown here. So this does become a 3-turn cooldown. So that's interesting on this side of things. So a lot of AoEs and only 2 active skills, it looks like. I mean, the third one is a metamorph, but that doesn't really count. So you've got this skill, AoE, True Fear, 3-turn cooldown, and then immediately you're going into some other AoEs that don't proc counterattacks, and you can get extra hits. So these are single target hits that might be double hits if you get that True Fear out on everybody. There's some interesting stuff going on with that for sure. Passive ability increases the champion's attack and crit damage by 20% while in their alternate form. So you get a nice little damage boost for being in this form anyway. So that's not so bad. Interesting champion. I think the attack definitely synergizes. To be honest, though, there's so many attack-based champions in this game. It's going to have to be freaking insane in her damage for this to really be worth it. I just don't really see it otherwise, to be fair. We're not ignoring block debuffs or anything with the True Fear, so it's as susceptible as any other debuffs. I do love the built-in lifesteal that she's got for sure. And being able to ignore things like Stone Skin and ally protection on the single target is not bad. But again, it is just single target, and that's definitely not the best thing. The block revive ability, though, I feel like that does give her some usage in things like Arena if she can hit hard enough. So that's going to be the big trick there is, can she hit hard enough to one-shot people? If she can, I think there's some real potential to her. Geralt Blood Maul, the other one, the last of these mythic champions, that's a big hammer, man. Big hammer, and not a lot of pants going on back there. That's okay. Okay. Not everybody needs to wear pants. Fine. Let's go. Let's see what her transformed look is. Oh, she gets some horns, gets a sword, and single-handing that maul and a tail. A big old tail. Okay, cool. I dig it, man. I dig how you look. HP base on the main side, the base form, I should say. Attacks one enemy, 50% chance of increasing cooldown of a random skill on the target by 2 turns. Okay. Also removes any shield buffs. Okay. Nothing crazy. Does have an ignore resistance, which ignore resistance for the shield seems a little weak to me. I'm not gonna lie. It's a weird. That's a weird one. Unless these are global, right? For all of her skills, I don't get why that's a skill book. Like, why do I need a book there? It does look like she takes 6 books on her base form. Some more ignore resistance here. Attacks all enemy, place provoke on all enemies for 1 turn, and places unkillable buff on this champion for 3 turns. 3 turn unkillable, definitely nice. The provoke also, I think that synergizes really well. HP based champion, this all makes a lot of sense so far. And then a 3 block buffs, cooldowns to 3 turns. So all these are 3 turn cooldowns. That's nice. Removes block buffs, debuffs from all allies, and places a 50% ally protection on all allies except this champion. So removes block buffs, places ally protection, also places a shield buff on all allies equal to 30% of this champion's max HP for 2 turns. That's great synergy, right? You can build her with huge HP, have that equate to a huge shield for your allies while you're giving them ally protection. That's a really nice thing. And this synergizes really nicely with the provoke and the unkillable. Let's go. First turn, I'm actually going to use my A2. Throw provoke out there, unkillable myself. I can't be touched. My allies aren't getting touched because I provoked the enemy. Second turn, I protect them with the ally protection and the shield. I'm still unkillable for 2 turns. So my unkillable ability is going to last the duration. And by the time all that runs out, guess what? My skill, oh, this is on a 4-turn cooldown. Why is this on a 4-turn cooldown? Ugh. Well, when that runs out, that's probably when I'm switching over my Metamorph skill. Let's look at the passive real quick. When attack decreases the duration of all buffs on the attacker by 1 turn, that's actually a nice passive. It occurs once per hit, so multi-hit champion's going to get affected more often. Also heals all allies except this champion by 50% of the damage taken. Okay. Whenever this champion is hit, occurs once per hit. That's not bad. I mean, that's basically what Vogoth. Vogoth is a very popular champion, well used. Basically, Vogoth's passive ability right there on Geralt. That's not bad, right? Especially considering that makes herself unkillable for such a long duration. I think that's actually really good. Now let's see how this synergizes with the other half of her kit. Well, I'll be honest, these champions are good. They'd be great as legendaries, even if you only took half their kit, right? Pretty cool. I like this. I'm actually getting really on board with this concept here. So only 3 skills here, 4 books, so 10 books total. A1 attacks all enemies, so AoE, 20% chance of repeating the attack. It is damage based on attack. I hate that mix mash. That's interesting. So, chance of repeating the attack, I guess, is okay. Just a basic AoE skill, too. A2 attacks all enemies. Damage of the skill increased by 10% for each buff on this champion. Okay. I mean, that's kind of a Turvold, style ability, and ignores 30% of the target's defense. I mean, that's nice. Always ignoring defense is always good, so that's not bad. Let's look at the passive. Whenever an ally attacks this champion, is a 25% chance to team up with them and join their attack. Damage increases that this champion's HP decreases by 1% for every 1% of HP lost. This is a real interesting thing. Now, I'm going to be honest. I don't love the synergy of having an attack-based champion with an HP-based champion, right? That part doesn't mesh super well. The other thing is that passive ability, it kind of mitigates that, but I need damage. If I'm relying on ally attacks for this, right? These are AoE, so things like Hex set, the Curse set, Provoke set could be really, really effective here. But I really wish this was HP based. I mean, even without testing it, I know I really wish this was HP based here, because if I'm gonna build her to, use the ally attacks to have low HP. I really want her with high HP to start with anyway, right? Man, that's I think super, super unfortunate, where you're going to really have to focus one side or the other. Or what you do, and I think this is what I would do personally. I'd probably focus on the HP side. Focus on the provoke, focus on the debuffs that she does bring to the table, right? And when I swapped over, allow the sets that I have do the work for me. So I'm talking about curse sets. I'm talking about provoke sets. I would let those do the work for me. But honestly, I like the synergy of her main kit here. I actually really like this a lot. I probably would just stick on this side, even though the A1 is just single target. I feel like there's definitely some possibilities just as kind of a support champion just to stick on this side. I mean, the other option is obviously you drop the provoke and then killable. This one's a weird one. I'm gonna be honest. This one's a weird one. There's some stuff in there that I like. I was thinking about the unkillable for 3 turns and then metamorphing, but immediately grants you an extra turn, which is going to run through those buffs. One of the negatives with the metamorph ability is you are going to burn through your buffs swapping over, because it does give you an extra turn. So it's basically 2 turns doing nothing, right? That's not great. It's not great. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, she could be really interesting on this side of things if you build her as an attack-based champion with a decent amount of HP and put something like a Fury set on her. Could be really interesting, especially in like a Man-Eater comp. Whether we're talking, Man-Eater involved, unkillable team. That could be really interesting, right? Chance of repeating attacks, AoE skills, ignoring some defense. You do more damage the more buffs you have, and as you lose HP, you do more damage. Basically, a Fury set built in. That could be interesting. I don't really love it right now. Don't really love it right now, but could be interesting. Anyway, those are the 5 champions we've got, right? So we've got, I think there's some interesting stuff in here, right? Arbais, I think, is cool. I really like Frolny. I think he was probably the best one. I think Sigfrund has some real interesting potentials, especially in arena, especially for some dungeon runs. I think there's some real interesting potential there. Mezomel could be good. I don't know. It just really depends on how hard she hits. And I do not like the synergy here with Geralt. Some interesting stuff for sure in this, guys. I'm really excited about this. I think this is going to be fun. Basically, every time we get a new one of these champions, we're getting 2 new champions. And I think there's some interesting stuff we can do with the synergy there. So definitely something worth considering as you're, determining whether you even want to get these kind of champions. But none of this really matters because it all comes down to how do we get these champions? Until we know that, all this doesn't really matter because they're easily attainable. Then we'll be like, okay, let's break it down. Let's really look into it. If they're not, then it's going to be like, well, I don't care. I'm never going to get one anyway. And even if I do, I'm never going to be able to book them. So what does it matter? My guess though is that they're going to be hard to get, right? They're mythic, not legendary. They're mythic, which you would think is a step above and probably will be. But you can see already the skills they have. Some of them are pretty impactful, I would say, as far as like what they're bringing to the table. And you have so many more options and varieties of how to use them and build them. And this community is super smart. So I'm sure a lot of you out there are going to come up with some great ways to use these champions. I'm actually really excited to see that. If you guys have some theory crafting ideas, honestly, share them down below. I would love to hear them. If they pique my interest, maybe I'll, hopefully I'll get a chance to actually test them in the test server. This is something I would like to do. I think these champions are real interesting and definitely worth a second look. So anyway, guys, that's all we got for today's video. Hopefully you enjoyed my breakdown of my theory crafting. I try not to just read skills. I want to talk about how we can use them. That's kind of the point, right? So hopefully you found my thoughts interesting and informative. I would like to hear yours though. So go ahead and let me know down below, which of these champions do you like? Which of them, where do you think you're going to be using them? How, any specific synergies that just jump to mind for you? Definitely appreciate hearing your thoughts on this. Don't forget about the faction games still going on. So make sure to go check those out. We have the schedule on the website. Guys, if you like this video, hit that subscribe button. Well, actually, if you like the video, hit the like. If you like the video or if you didn't like the video, hit the subscribe. I'm gonna pimp myself. Why not? Anyway, guys, that's what we got for today. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Till next we meet, I'm the Deadwood Jedi.